The host of the Before You Kill Yourself podcast is rejoining the show with a lot to catch us up on. It's been a while since Leo Flowers stopped by, but he is back with a lot to share. Leo was a star D1 athlete until suddenly an injury changed everything. This process took a tremendous toll on Leo's mental health and has a lot to share from that experience, plus the wisdom from his many podcast interviews. He is bringing value from all angles, but before I bring him on, let's find out how he podcasts. Leo, which platform do you stream your podcast through?
I use Art19.
Art19?
Yeah, I love Art19. You can listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and all that stuff. But the host of it is Art19, and I love it. They're kind of like a boutique podcast host, and to the point where you can't just add your podcast. They actually call you and talk to you about what you want to podcast about and what your mission and purpose is, and make sure it aligns with their company values. So I feel blessed to be able to work with them. And, you actually get to talk to a live person. So
That's exciting.
Shout out to Art19.
I'll have to look into that. I'm over here. I'm on Buzzsprout, but it's always great to learn new things. And that's what networking does. You learn a lot. When in the day do you find yourself listening to podcasts, Leo?
It's funny. I was listening to a podcast right before this. But typically, middle of the day, and then at the end of my day.
I like
so middle of the day, because in the morning, I'm all about, my philosophy has always been about create before you consume. So I don't want to consume podcasts. I don't want to consume the news. I don't want to consume emails until I have exercised some type of creative output, whether that's journaling, exercising, putting out a podcast, something of where I want to contribute first before I look to take from what's out there in the universe.
I'm with you on that morning.
So middle of the day, I find I hit that kind of brain fog, right? Where I'm like, all right, I've been up since 6. I've been grinding since noon. What's going out there in the world? Now I'm ready for the world.
I don't check my email in the mornings either until I get a certain amount of tasks done. Something I'm very big on is before I go to sleep, I write down the 3 most important things I need to do as soon as I wake up, along with planning out my day. Because, if you answer one email, you could start answering a bunch. And before you know it, there goes an hour. Do you find yourself listening in the car to these shows on your headset?
That's a great question. So I have different ways of listening to it. If I listen to it in the car, Michelle and I, we take like long car rides, and we love listening to podcasts like Duolingo or The Moth, like storytelling podcasts. And what I love about doing that is that it sparks conversation between us. We oftentimes won't listen. We won't even finish the podcast because we've paused it so many times to kind of highlight or discuss what was shared and how it resonates with us, and any thoughts that stream from that. So we're really listening as a form of connection and intimacy and discovery. It's a great way to learn more about your partner or the person that you're with, and also to have discussions about topics that may be more challenging for us to discuss.
I like that a lot. A podcast you're using to make a relationship stronger, learn more about your partner. I have not heard that, but I think it's something that could certainly work. And thank you for sharing that with our audience. I would love to hear how you podcast too. Email me, info@vincentalancy.com, and I will feature you at the beginning of an episode right here with Leo. Thank you for joining us. It is time to talk all things mental health, and this is a mental health break. I am your host and author of the books Mental Health Week and Mr. Lancy Talks Mental Health, Vincent A. Lancy. You can learn more about me at Vincent A. Lancy across all social media or YouTube. The website is vincentalancy.com. For those of you who are new to the show, each week I sit down with a mental health advocate or professional from around the world to share their why relating to mental health, along with some tips for success. We all have a different why, and we were about to learn today's guest's why in just a second. I began focusing on mental health after suffering a traumatic brain injury, or a TBI. Before I bring Leo on, I want to share that this episode is brought to you by Tampa Counseling and Wellness, dedicated to helping individuals looking to positively transform their lives through compassionate counseling and wellness coaching. If you struggle with depression, anxiety, or other mental health issues, call today for a free consultation. Tampa Counseling and Wellness, therapy that inspires change. Their website and phone number is in the episode description. Just scroll down. And today's guest is a former D1 athlete, as I mentioned, who graduated with a Master of Arts in Counseling and Psychology degree. So you also get value from that side too. As I mentioned, after the personal experiences, he's also a TEDx speaker and host of the amazing podcast, Before You Kill Yourself. As the host, he interviews other mental health experts, comedians, and best-selling authors as they destigmatize mental health and teach you how to thrive. I remember from the first episode we joined, he does a lot of stand-up comedy and had some big appearances as well and some big networks. I think that's very courageous. And as we know, confidence is a big part of mental health. He'll teach you to be confident as well. There's not much he won't teach you to do. Leo Flowers, thank you for coming on the show to break down some mental health stigma.
Thank you for having me, brother. I'm excited to be a part of this, and I truly believe the glory is in sharing our story. So I'm ready to get started.
I agree with you. It's going to be great to catch up right now. Please reintroduce yourself to our audience. Let them know who Leo Flowers is, and then we will get into mental health talk.
Man, Vincent, you did such a great job. I feel like they know everything about me. Division I athlete. I have a podcast. The only thing they don't know is I'm a little jet lagged from the flight last night. But I'll say this that wasn't included. I just turned 45, and it's so fascinating how at the age of 45, when it rains, it pours. In this past year, I was diagnosed with asthma. Never had an asthma issue in my life, as you shared. I was a Division I athlete, no breathing issues. Discovered I have sleep apnea, which means I stop breathing in my sleep. To the point, Vincent, where I did a sleep test and they discovered I stopped breathing 177 times every night in my sleep. So that's 45 years of my life that I spent unrested. And also was diagnosed with pre-diabetes. So a lot of changes have had to be made this year. And part of that is, kind of grieving some of the, that loss of identity, of feeling invincible, of feeling like I could do whatever, whenever, because I'm a Division I athlete. And now at 45, I'm walking around with an inhaler. So I went hiking with my mom, who turned 70 next year. And I had to turn back around during the hike. I was like, I got to go back. So, in terms of mental health and stigma, we know that when, health issues and identity issues, all that ties into it. So I'm excited to share the journey with you.
Me as well. It's been a while since we sat down. We actually went through a pandemic in between of when we spoke. Let's talk about one thing you learned about your mental health during the COVID pandemic.
I need a team.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first thing that I realized, that I can't do it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I immediately, and I understand for me and what I was able to do, but I immediately got an online therapist as soon as the lockdown started. Like that first day where I don't know, it was like March 18th, 17th. Uh, I immediately was like, I went in a fight or flight mode, and I said, I don't know how long this is going to be, and but I accepted, and I was that it could be permanent, that we
Mm-hmm.
may never emerge from this. So I said, I need a team of people to keep me sane because there's no way I can stay locked down. So I got a therapist, an online Zoom therapist. I got a life coach, and I also started a men's group called Onda. I started that with a few friends of mine, where we meet every week and we just talk for 90 minutes and share and connect, and cry and laugh and get angry and all those things. And then I also started a sugar and carbs addicts anonymous group. Not that I started, but I joined.
Okay.
So there's like AA, then I joined SCAA. And then I started strategizing. I like how, in terms of being intentional about reaching out to people. So when you ask me what was the thing I learned about my mental health, I realized that my mental health is so dependent on my relationships and feeling connected, and the willingness to reach out and talk to people uh, uh, about things that I had would typically have been uncomfortable with talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, people, relationships have taught me the value of that. That's, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm jet lagged because I was just home and not home, but I went back to Indianapolis and Muncie for homecoming. And I haven't been back in years, but I told myself months ago, I may never have a chance to go back because things are opening back up and I'm working so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm not intentional about planning my connections with people, about planning with not just building relationships, but deepening
Mm-hmm.
my existing relationships, then my work is always going to be a part. There's always work to do. I got a bookshelf over here. I have a million notepads in front of me. I have emails unanswered. I have text messages
Mm-hmm.
that are waiting for me to respond to. So there's always work to do. So I have to be intentional about connecting with friends, family, and meeting new people. So I knew I needed that for my mental health.
A lot of great points there. You need to be supportive of yourself before you can be supportive of others, and you need to do things that make sure that happens. Since you can't go out of therapy, our guest today is out in California, so there are pretty strict
Yes.
lockdowns, from what I understand, that may have limited your ability to get back and forth. Where did you find the therapist online? Did you use a teledoc? Did you find another service?
I'm blessed. My girlfriend found it. She actually. So what's interesting is the first therapist that I found. Um, we did a few sessions, and I just didn't feel the vibe. That
Mm-hmm.
he felt preoccupied, like he didn't really want to be there. That whatever I was sharing was, like he was like, what are you talking about? Why are we even doing this? Um, and so I just didn't feel heard or seen or understood. And so I share that because know that your relationship with your therapist is just as important as the credentials of your therapist, right? They could have all the plaques. They could be from Harvard, Yale, studied at Oxford, and speak 10 languages, or and have all these different credentials and accomplishments. They could be a book author, but ultimately, it's about how do you feel in the session, and do you feel seen by them? Do you feel heard and supported? So that relationship is really key to your transformation, and also your commitment and longevity with the therapy.
Therapy is not a one size fits all. And you listening on have heard me said that before. Like he's saying he wasn't feeling the vibe. Don't think that's the therapy. Think that's more of just not the right fit. And that's fine. People are so different from each other, especially now after a COVID lockdown. Our wants and needs are different. The way we're going to connect with people is different. But Leo here is pivoting to something that works well for him. Therapy is not for everybody, but for some people, it is a great, great tool and resource. Give it a try if you think it might be a great fit. Leo, I'd also like to now shed some light on your podcast, Before You Kill Yourself podcast. I know you're doing a ton of great work over on that show. Let's talk about the podcast a little bit.
Yeah, my podcast, Before You Kill Yourself, is a suicide prevention podcast. I myself have struggled with suicidal ideation. When I was 9, I told my mom when I turned 40, I was going to end my life. Now I'm 45. But that conversation, that thought has never left me. And I want to dig deeper as to why I would say something like that and why other people say things like that and end up ending their lives. Some have ended their lives at the age of 9, and some at 29, some at 40. And it was one of those things that I never took seriously. I was like, oh, yeah, I always say that. I'll never do that. And then Rashawn Salam, a Heisman Trophy winning running back, ended his life. And I was like, wow, he had a Heisman Trophy, which is the highest honor you can get in college football. Then he got recruited and played for the Bears, which would be a lifelong dream for me, when I was younger. And yet he ended his life in his 30s. Mm-hmm. And there's so many other people who have a similar story. And so I was like, if people with the resources and intelligence and family and friends and and therapists and things that we say you need to live a long life are ending their lives, then there has to be something else missing here. And so I want to start my podcast because I want it to be a free resource for people who feel like they're alone in this, who feel like they're the only ones feeling the pain, the hurt, the misery, the abandonment, the isolation, the withdrawal. And I want to let them know that there are other people who have a similar story, or at least, the story's not the same. We're feeling the same, emotions, hurt, pain, grief. These are all part of the human experience, and no one is immune to that. So I want my podcast to be a reminder of that. And that's why I have people who share both stats. I have authors and researchers and psychologists on to talk about suicide and suicidality. And then I have people who have attempted suicide, and they talk about what they were going through and what their experience was and what's given them strength and what's given them hope to keep going and to now share their story. So, the podcast is, talking about and sharing both sides of that. And then we're also very practical, because we know that people who've ended their lives, sometimes it's job loss, divorce, a transition, they've been bullied, unrequited love, these different things, or, they just feel isolated. And so we're talking about finances, Bitcoin, how to get out of debt, how to, what to do if you lose your job, how to take care of your health, how food affects your mood. We have dietitians on to talk, because, for myself, I found that limiting my sugars and carbs has reduced my mood swings and my suicidality. So when we're talking about saving somebody's life, that means we have to talk about life. We have to talk about what do you do if you're going through a divorce, or if you catch your spouse cheating, because these are reasons why people end their lives. So we're talking about life.
I think you're doing a great service by doing that, because you're making it a conversation that's casual. You're making these topics that are not so casual, just like mental health that we are both doing together. A lot of topics you talk about need more attention. Just no one wants to be the one to go out there and say it. You're giving people information they need, Leo. Thank you. Before we sign off, of course, I'm going to ask you for your last word again, but I'd like to give you the opportunity on this new episode. Instead of us doing another spotlight story, like for new guests, I want to give you the opportunity to shout out someone, spotlight someone who is doing great work for the mental health community. Leo, who would you like to show some love to?
My mom.
Like
My
that.
mom is, and I tell you why. My mom just came to visit us a few weeks ago, and like I said, she turned 70 next year, and I took for granted how strong my mom is, and I never really asked her questions because I was like, well, I have a master's. She only has a high school diploma. I make more money than she does. What does she know about life? And as I'm getting older, I'm realizing she knows so much about life. And the beauty is that she doesn't know what I know. And that's why I should be picking her brain, because she has different experiences. She has a different background, a different perspective. So I definitely should be picking her brain. But I say my mom because when she came to visit, my mom loves to play the lottery. And I said, Ma, what would you do if you won the lotto? Because everybody wants the money, but a lot of people don't really think about what they would do with the money.
100%.
And she said, I would buy a Harley Davidson and ride it across country. And she made this, and I videotaped it. I put it up on my Facebook, and she made this little whir with her hands, like she was revving the engine. And I mean, everybody commented. Everybody was like, I love your mom. Your mom is so cute and adorable. And what makes that story funny is my mom says she wants a Harley. She wants to drive it across country. My mom has never learned how to drive. She doesn't have a driver's license. She never got one, never sat behind the wheel of a car. And yet, here she is about to turn 70, and her wish is to get a Harley Davidson and drive it across country. And that is just a reminder of how ridiculous life is and how ludicrous it all is, and not to take things so seriously. Because anybody who is thinking about things would be like, how do you jump from a car to a motorcycle? You know what I mean? Like that's like you don't have a driver's license, but I wanna learn to fly helicopters. It's like, hold on, learn how to drive a car first. And here's my mom, she's leapfrogging 10 steps, and the look of joy in her face. And when I shared that video, how many people that I hadn't talked to in so long were just inspired by her zest for life, for her vitality and her enthusiasm, for still wanting that dream. And and it also just conjures up the image of like, yeah, going across country would be cool at any age, to feel that breeze on your face, the open road, the engine. I mean, what a time to be alive, and we're never too old to feel that.
Love that message too. Follow your dreams. If you want it, go out there and get it, make it happen. Leo, how can everybody find you?
If you go to leoflowers.com, it links to my podcast, to my comedy. And then if you go to thrivewithleo.com, thrive, THRIVE with Leo.com, there is one-on-one coaching with yours truly. Let's get to tomorrow together.
Absolutely. Be sure to check him out. We are at A Mental Health Break on all social media. Besides Twitter, because of the character limit, we are Podcasts by Lancey. So you have updates from all of my shows. I am at Vincent A. Lancey for all social media, YouTube. My website is vincentalancey.com. All of my books are on Amazon, so you get them tomorrow if you Prime it. My latest book is Mental Health Week, the go-to book for elementary school students to learn the basics of mental health in a fun story. Leo, give us a last word before we sign off.
Your glory is in your story, right? So whatever you're going through, when you share your story, Start off with your flaws. I do stand-up comedy, and the first thing I talk about is, struggling with diabetes. I talk about how I slept in my car for 3 years. I talk about my relationship struggles with my dad and romantically. These are the things that connect us as people.
Yes.
The deeper we go into our story, the more universal our story becomes. It's why if you watch Netflix, that's why the Squid Game is the number one show, right? It's a Korean show with subtitles, a South Korean show, with subtitles, and yet millions of Americans and people worldwide are watching this, even though they've never been to South Korea
Mm-hmm.
and they don't know what the Squid Game is. So their glory is in your story. Whatever you're going through, somebody can connect with that.
Thank you for sharing that. That is very important. I always believe you never know what part of story is going to resonate with you. If you tune in today, might be where Leo's from, might be that he played football, might be that he likes to hike, or he's family oriented. You name it, that he's a podcast. There's something that's going to connect with you that will allow you to tap into his life and make a difference in your own. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week on A Mental Health Break. Leo Flowers, thank you for stopping by once again.
Thank you, brother. See you later, Vincent.